No, you know what? I feel great. Not quite great enough to walk up the loft stairs into the library, but great nonetheless. Because I'm feeling so great today, I am going to be doing a lot of stuff, I feel. I feel like it's gonna be a really good day. Hey, who knows? Maybe it will finally be a reading vlog where I read more than one book. That would be lovely. Let's do that. Hey babes. Hi. So I had another book chosen to read this weekend. I wanted to choose one of the books that was on my list for Harriet's birth. And then, I don't know, I got swept away in a bit of a Christmassy type mood. This is why I can never, ever, ever make a TBR, because I don't stick to it. So I am currently reading The Merry Viscount by Sally Mackenzie. Sally Mackenzie is one of my favorite historical romance authors, and she has been for years. I'm really enjoying Sally Mackenzie's new stuff because it's just a little bit different. What I'm finding this year especially, sometimes whenever I pick up a historical romance book, I feel like I've read it before. So The Merry Viscount is the story of Caroline and Nick. Nick is your typical, just got his title, was a degenerate rake kind of guy, and he is half Italian, and shortly after his parents died when he was 11, he was transported to England, and he's never really felt at home in England. So he used to spend his summers from school from age 11 to 15-ish at the house of his friend Henry. His friend Henry had a sister named Caroline. Caroline is this story's heroine, and since then, her life has taken a couple sudden turns, and she is now the brewmaster of a shelter for spinsters and single mothers who happen to need a shelter and a place to work. So in order to keep their shelter open, they brew this beer, and Caroline is at the head of that brewing operation, and she's the one who's trying to expand so that they get more money, so that they can take in more people, and she's on her way back from a very disappointing trip to London to do just that when she is caught in this terrible snowstorm. It's very soon to Christmas, and they happen to get caught right outside of Nick's manor. Well, even though she hasn't seen the guy in over a decade, she decides, you know what, I'm not going to be intimidated by the fact that this Lord's manor is here. I'm going to make sure that all of these people get the help that they need. So in typical brazen fashion, she strides up to his door and essentially interrupts his orgy. And of course, at first, whenever she and Nick come face to face again, it's been so many years, they don't recognize each other. So I'm very, very early in this book, but I have high hopes. Also, Christmas book, in a Christmas mood, making some Christmas cookies. Let's talk about books. You've been listening to this book too, babes. Come here. So, I've been listening to The Merry Viscount for a couple hours now. I've got 6 hours left in this book, and I can definitively say that it is not like all the other books about reformed rakes out there. So, the entire coach worth of people has been taken into this Lord's home at this point, including a mother and her 2 children. And she has an infant, a 4-week-old infant. Hi, babes. And she has a 4-week-old infant and a 7-year-old son. And her 4-week-old infant happens to be the child of one of the Viscount's guests at this lewd party. And so the book has kind of gotten into this interesting territory where it's exploring the idea of fidelity and, of course, the lack of it in the upper classes, and of responsibility and, right versus wrong and stuff like that. And I really love all of the characters. It makes for a very dynamic and a little bit chaotic atmosphere to have so many characters from different walks of life. Like, for instance, we have the young mother and her 2 children, and she's obviously of a different social class than the man who got her pregnant with her young daughter, and he had told her that his name was different even at that point, and then promised to marry her, etc., and so on. And then we've got the sex worker who had come to entertain him, who is now outraged at him for being there with her rather than being with his family as she sees it. And especially when they lived so close by where he was going for this house party, he's appalled. He's appalled that any man would deign to treat a woman and his children in such a fashion. Anyway, we've got Caro, who made some poor choices, perhaps was misled by her employer, and her reputation was completely ruined. She was cast off by her family, so she winds up at this shelter for widows and abandoned women and young mothers. And so this is very personal for her. And then we've got this undercurrent between her and the Lord, Nick, because she used to know Nick because Nick was her brother's friend. But that was years and years ago. Now she needs Nick's protection because one of the men who was on the coach with her, she thinks might intend to force himself on her, so she wants Nick to pretend to be utterly in love with her, and therefore she's under his protection while they're at this house and they're having this torrid affair. And she was told by one of the other sex workers that that Nick is having some problems performing, so she thinks that Nick is impotent, and she thinks that by doing this she's helping him out, and he knows that, like, he's not impotent, but he's playing along so that he can protect Caro. And it's really interesting, all of the layers that are coming out in this book. I'm really enjoying it. There's some really good banter. What I love about Sally Mackenzie is her use of diction, and you can yawn as much as you want, but her diction is not boring. It is actually fantastic. I love the way that she uses vocabulary from the time period and really brings it to life in that way. My hand is very wet now. That's really all I have to say at the moment, and I'm being pushed off the couch, so I might as well stop here. But I am so looking forward to finishing this book. It is great. So The Merry Viscount was fabulous. I read that yesterday. I read that yesterday. I didn't even mean to pick it up. I picked it up when I was feeling like I needed to put some heat on my wrists, so I couldn't pick up the physical book that I was planning on reading yesterday. And after I did, I just could not put it down. I really liked that it took the reformed rake trope and really twisted it hard. I am not a fan of the reformed rake trope, but this one really made it unique. What I liked about this book, now it was not perfect by any standard, but what I liked about this book was the way that it explored other aspects of various things. Like at one point he realizes that he might actually have a child out there somewhere, and he's never ever gonna know it if he does. And he's mainly partaken in sexual activity with whores. There are sex workers in the story, which I really liked because they were given like names, and they were given personalities, and they were spoken of as real people. They had their own agency. So I really enjoyed the way that the author explored those sorts of things, it wasn't done perfectly. To me, there was just like a little bit of judgment, which I didn't exactly like, but I really enjoyed all three of these sex workers and the way that they were, all of them, very complex characters, and they influenced the plot, and I liked that. I also really enjoyed the exploration of why Nick was such a rake, and how he realizes over the course of this like 48-hour period that he's been really just punishing himself, not even punishing his uncle, which is his whole point for being a rake. And I also really liked Caro's progression. Now, there is mention of sexual assault in this book. It's actually quite heavy. That's usually one of my triggers, but this time it wasn't. But I will note that there is a very in-depth exploration of not only the more violent aspect of sexual assault, but also statutory rape and the guilt associated with that. And I also don't think that was done perfectly. There were a few things that the hero agreed to that I just feel like he shouldn't have when she was speaking about them. But overall, I could not put this book down. I really liked the emotional connection between Caro and Nick. I really liked the way all of the other elements kind of came together in this book and really made it whole. And I loved that it was like Christmas themed because I was in a Christmas themed mood yesterday. I'm still in a Christmas themed mood today. I am going to decorate the tree with my in-laws, and I've decided that I am going to read another historical Christmas book. This one's an anthology. It's called How the Dukes Stole Christmas, and I know that Tessa is in it, and I can't remember everybody else. Give me a second. Sarah MacLean, Sophie Jordan, and Joanna Shupe. He likes that word. Joanna Shupe. He likes Joanna Shupe. So I'm looking forward to reading that and continuing on my historical Christmas themed journey. Also, I'm feeling pretty good today. Reading weekend. I finished the first story in How the Dukes Stole Christmas. It's called Meet Me in Mayfair by Tessa, and it's basically the reason why I bought this anthology. And I hate to say it, but especially compared to the Merry Viscount that I read on Friday, it was a little bit forgettable. The premise of the story is that she's about to be evicted from her house because of an old debt that her father incurred with a past duke. That duke died. Now his nephew has become duke and is calling in the debt. And she winds up falling in love with that nephew. I liked it because I like Tessa's writing style, but it wasn't really long enough to have her signature humor or some of the really nice quirky things that she adds into her books. So it just kind of felt like something that I've read and probably won't read again, but it was nice. The next story is called The Duke of Christmas Past by Sarah MacLean, and I haven't read anything by Sarah MacLean, so this could be the story that makes me into a lifelong fan. You never know. That's my reading plans today. I feel like I'm not going to be pushing to read the other two novellas in this anthology today. I just want to relax, maybe play some Pokemon, go see my niece, and make cookies. So I feel like I'm probably going to end this here. Like I said, I didn't really have that much to say about meet me in Mayfair. If I have something interesting to say about this next novella, I will pop back and say it, but otherwise, I think I'm going to end this here and say happy reading.